Awesome.
Okay, here we go. We're going to get started tonight. We're learning Maseches Zevachim Daf Samech Hey, and we're actually starting at a Mishnah toward the bottom, 2/3 of the way down on Samech Daled Amud Beis. Very, very, very large Mishnah. The Mishnah obviously starts where it starts, and it ends about a quarter of the way down on Samech Hey Amud Aleph. And there's really primarily just a lot of brisa today, and a little bit on the Amud Beis Machlokos Amoraim, how to understand possibly what our Mishnah, who our Mishnah is authored by. So let's get started. We're going to be discussing the Ola Sa'of. Yesterday we focused on the Chata Sa'of. Says the Mishnah, Ola Sa'of, Ketzad Nases. If one is bringing an Ola, that is a bird, so what then do you do? Says the Gemara, Ola Lakebesh Upana La Sovev. So the Kohen will go up the ramp and he will end up on the Sovev, which is a ramp that goes around, not a ramp, but it's a ledge that goes around the middle of take a walk, a ledge, the ledge that goes around. What?
Cut that out, please. That was terrible.
So what did he do for the Ola Sa'of? He went up the ramp and he was Panala Sovev, and he went to the ledge. Balo Lekaren Dromis Mizrachis. So he walks up the ramp, which we said was on the south, and he makes a right and he heads to the southeast corner of the ramp. And right there, Hayamolekes Rosh Mimul Orpa Umavdil. He does Malika of the head on its neck, and he's Mavdil, and he separates the head. This is unlike the Chata Sa'of, which we learned yesterday, where he doesn't separate the head. Here he does separate that. Remember yesterday we discussed why it is that he's on the southeast corner, because we said that the container where he had to throw the crop and the feathers was below him. It actually wasn't right below him. It was only 10 amos off the ramp. The ramp was 32 amos. It was a 22 amma throw. That's a zafta good throw. That's 35, 40 feet. 35 feet. It's got to have some good aim. I don't know how big the basket was. Well, we're going to see later that the feathers were connected to a cut of meat. So the feathers weren't totally on their own. We'll see that a little bit later today. Anyways, he's on the southeast corner. He does malika on the back of the neck and he separates the head. Umitza es dama al kira mizbech, and then he squeezes out the blood of the animal on the mizbech. Natal es harosh, v'hikif beis malikaso lemizbech. He takes the head, and then what he does is v'safko b'melach. He dips it in salt right there on the corner. There was a little container of salt, and then v'zarko al gabe ha'ishim. He takes the head and he basically takes the base malika and he sticks it in salt, and then he throws the head onto the fire. Right? He was on the sovev of the. So like again, this is the mizbech. He's standing over here, but on the sovev, so a little bit lower. Dips it in, tosses it up, and over onto the fire. All of that was for the head of the animal. Then the Mishnah says 2/3 of the way down, balo leguf. Then he deals with now he has a headless chicken, right? That's what he has. He removes the crop, he removes the feathers, and he removes some of the innards of the animal. To that place where we throw things, which is where the deshen goes, and that is 10 amos to the north of the base of the ramp, 22 amos from the edge of the mizbech. Shisa below hivdil. He tears it, but he does not totally separate the animal. He tries to tear it down the middle, basically. The im hivdil kosher, but if he does tear it all the way through, it's going to be kosher. These are the basic dinim. Now, for the remainder of the Mishnah, we're going to be dealing with a bunch of what-if scenarios. And just because I know you loved it so much, we're going to be getting back into pigul, chutz lizmano, and chutz l'mekomo. Says the Gemara, what if lo hisir hamorah v'lo hanotza what if you didn't remove the crop? What if you didn't remove the feathers or the innards of the animal? What if you didn't dip it in salt? Says the Gemara. Anything after the mitzui hadam, you're good to go. Why? Pashut, that's the matir, right? The matir is obviously going to be the mitzvah against the wall. Hivdil bechatas v'lo hivdil be'ola. What if you did the wrong thing? We know by the chatas you are not supposed to be totally mavdil the head, but what if you did? Or by the ola where you are, what if v'lo hivdil be'ola? The halacha is puzzle. Those halachos in regards to the removal of the head, those need to be kept. We'll learn a little bit more about this on Samech Hayamid Beis. Mitzah es hadam, mitzah es dam harosh, v'lo mitzah es dam haguf psula. We don't want you to do mitzvah sadam on the head of the animal. The heart's not up there. There's no pumping blood up there. You cut off the head. that's not the place that you should do mitzvahs hadam. So if you do mitzvahs hadam on the rosh but not on the body, it's puzzle. Mitzvahs dam haguf lo mitzvah dam harosh kshera. But if you did the mitzvahs hadam on the animal, on the body but not the head, you're good to go. Let's get into some kavana shelo lishma. If you have the chata sa'of and you did the malika shelo lishma, or mitzvah dama shelo lishma, or if you had a double machshava of lishma v'shelo lishma, or the reverse, o shelo lishma v'lishma, all of these are going to be puzzle. Every piece of this requires unpacking the Gemaras later on. We're not really going to do so much of that before the end of the parak. A lot of these principles we learned earlier in the Masechta of double kavanas. We're not going to get into the nuances of each one because we will be here all night. Says the Gemara, the next part of the Mishnah is 8-9 lines from the bottom. Echad chata sa'of ve'echad ola sa'of. And whether or not we're talking about the chata sa'of, which we focused on yesterday, or the ola sa'of, which we just started on in this Mishnah that we started with today, shemalkan v'shemitza es daman. If you do malika and you did the pressing of the blood against the mizbeach, lechol davar shedarko lechol, with a kavana to eat something that's normally eaten, or lahaktir davar shedarko lahaktir, and you had in mind to burn something that's normal to burn. However, you did so chutz lemekomo. So chutz lemekomo machshava, what does that yield? Pasal vein bokaris. The only time we have pigul is by zman. So what if your kavana was chutz lezmano? Then pigul v'chayavan alav karis b'lvan sheyakriv hamatir kimitzvaso. We discussed this already. If b'shas shchita you have a machshava of chutz lezmano, but you haven't done the matir yet, which is usually zrika sadam. In this case, it's mitzah sadam. You're not chayiv pigul until the matir happens. So in moment one, I'm doing the malika. I have a kavana chutz lezmano. So that's a good start of the formula for trying to be chayiv kares. But I'm not going to be chayiv kares until I do the mitzvah sadam. Then retroactively, we go back to that moment by the malika and say you're chayiv kares. Ketzad karev hamatir kimitzvah. So what does it look like when we are completing that action to bring about kares? So malak b'shtika. I'm just letting you know now. We're going to learn about 10 different cases, one after the other, tightly packed. Okay. So what are all of these cases? Malak b'shtika, if you did the malika quietly, umitza hadam chutz lezmano, and the mitzah hadam was done with chutz lezmano, or shemalak chutz lezmano, you did the malika chutz lezmano, mitzah hadam b'shtika, o shemalak umitza hadam chutz lezmano, zeh shekarev hamatir k'mitzvah. So this is your classical way to violate your chiyuv kares. You did the matir with kavana of chutz lezmano. Ketzad lo karev hamatir k'mitzvah. What are the cases where you are lacking that final action that would generate an iser of kares, an onesh of kares? Says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom on Samech Daled Amud Beis. Malak chutz le mikomo, right? That's not going to bring about kares. Umitza hadam chutz lezmano. So obviously the first kavana was le mikomo, second one is man. Osha malak chutz lezmano umitza hadam chutz le mikomo. Or the malika was chutz lezmano, and then afterwards you had a kavana of chutz le mikomo by the mitzvah. Or you had a kavana both by malika and mitzvah sadam, that it would be in the wrong location. Or turning to the top of Samachay Amud Aleph, let's say that you had a kavana of doing the chata sa'of, the malika of the chata sa'of without kavana, umitza hadam chutz l'makomo, and a secondary thought of chutz l'zmano by the dam. Or, as I mentioned, there's a lot of stacked cases here. Each one requires commentary. O shemalak chutz lezmano. Let's say you had the malik of chutz lezmano, umitza damo shelo lishma. O shemalak umitza hadam shelo lishma. Zehu shelo karev hamatir kimitzvah. So none of these will work. In some cases, it was because chutz l'makomo was first. In some cases, it's because you did two different kavanos, and we learned about this earlier in the Masechta, that if you're blending machshavos together, that ruins kares in some cases, according to some. Next, 4 lines down on Samachay Amud Aleph, lechol kezayis bachutz kezayis lemachar, or kezayis lemachar kezayis bachutz, or kechatzi zayis bachutz kechatzi zayis lemachar, or kechatzi zayis lemachar kechatzi zayis bachutz. In all these cases, pasol ve'ein bo kares. Rabbi Yehuda, I disagree. Zehaklal, the general principle is not like that. Rather, im machshavas hazman kadam machshavas hamakom pikol v'chavan alav kares. He disagrees with the Tanakama. The Tanakama had said that if you have a chutz hazmano thought followed by chutz l'makomo, because you have 2 machshavos, there's no pikol. Says Rabbi Yehuda, why? Once you do chutz l'zmano, who cares what you do afterwards? Even if you have a chutz l'makom machshava, that doesn't undo it, and you should be chayv kares. If the first machshava you had was chutz l'makom, then you're never chayv kares because chutz l'makom was your first machshava. The Chachamim Omer might disagree. Zev is zev pasal be'in bo kares. We have to figure out what the difference is between this and the Tanakama. Fine. And then the Mishnah concludes with the last case. Lechol kechatzi zayis ulehaktir kechatzi zayis kosher she'en achila v'aktar mitzarfen, a din that we've seen earlier in the Masechta. This is one of those Gemaras that we said we'll see later in the Masechta and the Mishnah. This is actually the Mishnah that houses the source of ein achila v'aktar mitzarfen. That if I have a negative kavana, chatzi zayis of chutz lizmano, by haktara, by burning something, and another one by achila, those two half machshavos are not mitzaref. End of Mishnah. Obviously, there's so much to learn in this Mishnah. This would be great to learn with Kahati, because at least in the Daf Yomi framework, because it will give you a very quick analysis of each line. Lamaisa, we have a multiple way machlokas about what is considered to be a matir, what is considered to be that action that makes your original chutz lizmano into kares, versus the actions that won't make your original chutz lizmano into kares. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis have taught us in a brisa, a quarter of the way down on Samachay Amid Beis. Tanu Rabbanon v'hikrivo. The pasuk reads, this is Vayikra Aleph Tezvav, v'hikrivo hakohen el hamizbech u'malak es rosho v'chulei. So v'hikrivo, he will shecht it. Matam olomar. Why do we have this language of v'hikrivo in the singular? Why doesn't it just say v'hikriv? Or whatever else it could have said. V'fishenem ar v'hikriv minat torim o min b'nei hayona. Look at that pasuk. Torim, how many Tors? 2. B'nei Yona, multiple. So, Yachal HaMisnadev Of, Lo Yivchos Mishnei Preden. Maybe we need to only allow a donation of a minimum of 2 birds. Why? Because, says the Gemara, Shteit and Pasuk that way. Shteit Torim is plural and B'nei Yona is plural. So I might have thought that whenever a person makes an adava of an oaf, that it has to be 2 ophos. Says the Gemara, Tamaloma Rikrivo in the singular, Afilu Preda Achas Yovi Elamizbech, that I can bring even only 1 bird that's acceptable, pushing back against the Pasuk. Matamaloma HaKohen, the Pasuk there says, in the same Pasuk we started with, V'hikrivo HaKohen, says the Gemara, Likvo Alo Kohen. The only person who can do this action is a Kohen. I could have argued that maybe I didn't need a Kohen to do Malika. Why would I have thought that? Third the way down, says the Gemara. Uma ben son shekavalo tzafon lo kavalo Kohen. When it comes to a larger animal, I don't need a Kohen to do the shechita. Even a zar can do the shechita. Even if the tzon, even if that animal is kachay kachim and only can be done b'tzafon, even a chamor animal. There we say we don't need a Kohen. Oh, shalo kavalo tzafon eno den shalo yikbalo Kohen. Pasha that we wouldn't need a Kohen over here. That's why we said Talmud Lomar Kohen. The word El does not belong because it's not in the pasuk. Talmud Lomar Ha Kohen Likvo Alo Kohen, because I might have thought otherwise. Yachol Yimlakenu Besakin. We might have thought that perhaps Malika should be done with a knife. Why would we have thought that? Videnu, it's logical to assume that. Why would we assume that Malika should be done with a blade instead of with my thumbnail? Umma im shchita shelo kavala Kohen kavala kli. When it comes to shchita, where we don't have a Kohen, we do have a kli. Then building off of what we just learned, Malika shekavalo Kohen eino din sheyikbalo kli kal v'chomer. Pasha, there we should have to have a kli. We should have to have a knife. Talmud Lomar Kohen umalak. These 2 words together teach me that the Kohen himself does the Malika, and there is no kli. Even though it would have been somewhat logical to assume that there could have been a need for a kli, Kamash Malan, that Malika does not require a blade and cannot be done with a blade. If you do Malika with a blade, it's not kosher. You're not allowed to shech that way. These are anti-logical in regards to, they're not, we would never have thought. We would have said, Kol Shekain, it's kosher with shechita. No, not by korbanos. Shechita is a matir for achila. Malika is a matir for korbanos. But they don't interchange. You can't kill an animal with malika for a shechita. That would be an iser d'oraisa of nevela. It's mamish treif to eat that. Treif's the wrong word. It's nevela to eat that food. It might even be metame. But over here, Talmud Lomar Kohen Umalak to teach us that we do not need a kli. Amar Rabbi Akiva. V'chitale al dadcha shezar karev legabe mizbeach. He says, how can you have a havamina that it's going to be anyone other than a Kohen? After all, a zar can't stand over there right? The Zar, where is he allowed to do the Shechita? We said the Zar is only doing Malika where? On the Sovev by the southeast corner. Sahaba mean that a Zar should be there. A Zar can't stand over there. That's Ezra's Kohanim. You're totally out of range. That's your Chayv Kore. I don't know if your Chayv Kore, if your Chayv Kore, if a Zar goes into that place. Maybe, I don't know the din. It says the Gemara, in other words, we don't need the word Kohen to teach me that only a Kohen can do it, because there's Pasha that only a Kohen can do it, no one else is allowed to be there. No, he says, rather, Shetehei Malika be'atzmo shel Kohen. Says the Gemara that he has to use it with his body and not with a kli, and that's how he learned it, and therefore we don't need the drush of Kohen v'malak. Yochal yimlakena bein milamala bein milamata. Maybe he can do the malika a high or low, above or below the chutah sikra. Talmud lomar, or about 2/3 of the way down, 5 lines before the wide lines. Talmud lomar umalak v'hiktir mahak Torah b'rosh hamizbeach af malika b'rosh hamizbeach. No, it has to be on the top of the mizbeach, and we learn that from a hekesh of the words of umalak and v'hiktir. And what does the word umalak mean on its own? Mimul oref. It means on the back of the neck, not on the front of the neck. Ata omer mimul oref. You say that the word umalak teaches that it has to be on the back of the neck. Oh, elaminat savar. Why can't it be on the front of the neck? A much more rational place to kill an animal on the front of the neck. That's how we do shechita. We don't do shechita from the back of the neck. You're not even allowed to do shechita from the back of the neck because of the spine. In fact, in Hilchos Shechita, if a shochet shechs and the blade even touches the bone in the back, we're choshesh the animal's a treifa without checking to make sure that the knife wasn't nifgam by touching, especially their knives. Their metal was very low quality compared to what we have. Our knives are so sharp and they're so hardened, and our knives even chip after a while. Even the good Cutcos chip after a while. They do. They do. Could you imagine their knives? I mean, they had to be sharp enough to cut. They had to wear down. I have an izemel, like the double-sided knife for Mila. The orla that you cuts like butter. But I asked the person who sharpened it, how many cuts can you do before you should sharpen it again? He said, not too many, maybe a couple hundred. Couple hundred? You're cutting a nothing. It's a nothing. I use single-use scalpels, but they also cut like butter. They're fantastic, but I don't have to worry about how sharp they are. I mean, I do, but they're one-time sharp is perfect, then I toss them. I had a new one today. Someone came over to me and said, I heard it's a skula to take the knife. I'm like, whatever, just take it. I have no idea what you're talking about. He took the scalpel from me and he walked away with it. I'm like, I don't know the skulas then. So other people have asked to take the orla. This knife's not so bad. At least the orla, there's a din that you're supposed to bury it in cholva afar. That already that's a real thing. I have sand in my basement. I dip it in the sand. Then I think it was Rabbi Reese who told me once you get sand on it, then you can discard of it in regular. It's not like kadosh. It's just that it has to be back with the earth. So once you have sand on it, then you can discard it. So this guy came over this morning. He's like, can you tell me about the school, about the blade? I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. The sandik today was, in one of the bris I did, was part of the Abu Chatzera family. It was a holy yid. Yeah, we had a great, and after the bris, he's like, Gamani mohel. I'm like, you should have told me that, Then he hacked me up on a couple of halachic things that us Litvaks do that the Svardim don't do. Milo priya bavas achas, we use a hemostat, we grasp both layers. They don't do it that way. They tear the Rabbi first said to me once, you should do bris milah the right way, like I do it. He said, because they do the whole, whatever, I'll spare you. We don't have time for this. But anyways, it was a fascinating conversation. Where are we? Oh, here we are. So says the Gemara, Ata Omer, we're 3 lines before the wide lines. Ata Omer mimul oref oinu elamin atzavar. Says the Gemara, that's not a reasonable thing to say that it's the tzavar. It has to be the oref, because v'dinu. We have a kal v'chomer. Ne'amar kanu malak v'ne'amar lahalanu malak ma lahalan mimul oref av kan mimul oref. So 2 psukim, and therefore we know that it has to be the back of the neck and not the front of the neck. But in one of those cases, which was a case of Chat HaSa'of, Molek ve'eno mavdil, as we learned about yesterday, that when we talk about Chat HaSa'of, yes, you do Malika in the same spot. You do Malika in the southeast corner of the Mizbech, but you're not mavdil the head. This has 2 pshatim. Either you only cut one siman, or it means you cut both, but you don't remove the head. but it's different than the Ola. Afkan, maybe by Ola Sa'of Molek Ve'eno Mavdil, which we know is not the case, because our Mishnah said explicitly that you are Mavdil the head. So says the Gemara, how do we know that we don't make a tzushtel from Chata Sa'of to Ola Sa'of? Talmud Omar Umalak V'hiktir. Mahaktara Harosh La'atzmo V'haguf La'atzmo. Just like when it comes to the burning of the head and the body, that they're done separately. Af Malika Harosh La'atzmo V'haguf La'atzmo. So too by the Ola Sa'of, the Malika is a total separation of the head. 3/4. So the way down, 3 lines into the wide lines. I mean, 9 shaktar sarosh ba'atzmo v'guf ba'atzmo. Mechatesi, that by ola sa'of we should separate the head and burn it, and separate the body and burn it. Says the Gemara. Shenemar b'hiktiro so hareaktaris haguf amura. One pasuk says it, and that is referring to the guf. Hamani mekayim v'iktar mizbecha b'haktaris harosha kasim medaber. So we see that there's 2 psukim that speak about haktara. One says b'ktiro so, one says b'ktar mizbecha. One of them is referring to haktaris haguf. The other is referring to haktaris harosh. And therefore we know that by the ola sa'of that these 2 things have to be done separately. And just nacharaya that we have to separate the head of the ola sa'of. Minim sadamo. What does that mean that you have to squeeze out the blood? Kulo. That means with the bird, you're taking the body side of the bird, not the head side of the bird. You squeeze out as much blood as you can. It says kulo, all the blood. I don't know what that means. The maisa, you have to wait till every drop. I don't know how they measured that. There's going to be droplets of blood for a long time. I mean, whatever. It'll take a minute. I don't know how long it takes. A couple minutes. I have no idea how long it takes to drain. I've never tried. Says the Gemara, what does the pasuk mean? Al kira mizbech, lo al kira kebesh, not on the ramp, lo al kira heichal, and it doesn't go on the wall of the heichal. Ad habamina, we're standing on the mizbech. Nevertheless, zekir elyon has to be the upper wall. That's where the ola sa'of goes. Asks the Gemara, enu ela kira tachton. Maybe we should take the blood of the ola sa'of and be mamatza on the lower wall below the chut hasikra, the dinhu, and it's logical to assume that it should be on the lower wall and not the higher wall for the ola sa'of. Why? Ma behema shechatasa lemala olasa lemata. A behema where it's chata, so a chatas behema is above the chut hasikra, the bird of a chatas, so a chatas, the bird of ma behema shechatasa lemala olasa lemata, a large animal, a large animal that is a chatas is above, and a large animal that's an ola is below, then o shechatasa lemata, eno din sheolasa lemata. Then if you have a bird that's a chatas, that is below. Pasha, that it should be the case with an ola of a bird that should also be below. Talmud Lomar, that's not correct, that it has to be above. Umalak v'hiktir v'nimtzadama. Look at these words, they make no sense in their order. You do malika first, then you burn it, then you do mitsui. That Pasha makes no sense. How is that possible? After you throw it on the fire, then you pull it off and do mitzvah. No, the animal's going to cook out the blood in a short amount of time. Ella, obviously, that's not what the pasuk means. So, what does the odd order of the pasuk of umalak v'hiktir v'nimtza mean? Says the Gemara 10 lines from the bottom. It can't be below the chut hasikra. The ola sa'of has to be above for a whole host of reasons. How then does this brisa say that the ola sa'of should be taken care of? Says the Gemara, you take the ola sa'of, you walk up the right side of the ramp, you turn right when you get to the mizbech, and then you are going to walk to the southeast corner. You do malika on the head of the animal, on the back of the neck. You separate the head, squeeze out the blood from the goof on the mizbech. And this is a new din that we haven't learned yet, that if you do the blood 1 amma below your feet, kosher. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Where is he standing? On the sovev. Sovev is a few amos below the top of the mizbeach. So what do you mean 1 amma below? Says the Gemara, Reb Nechemia Reb Elazar ben Yaakov Omrim, Kol atzma ein nases ela barosha mizbeach. They argue. So the first sheet of the Tanakama says that 1 amma below is okay. The second sheet that says, what are you talking about? It has to be on the mizbeach. Ay beinahu. V'rava da'amre tarvayu. Osem arach al gabe sovev ika beinahu. Take a few pieces of wood. You're a rebel. Maybe you're lazy. I don't know what you are. You take some wood, you put it on the sovev, and you light a fire. It's my new pyre. It's in the wrong place. But are you Yotzei or not? According to the Tanakama, you're Yotzei. And according to Reb Nechemia and Reb Elazar, you are not Yotzei. Who knew? By the way, the Soviet people walked around. So like what are you doing?
What material?
What material was what?
So it itself is also stone.
Yeah, the whole thing was stone. It was that mixture of stone with the tar and the
So it'll withstand.
tar, lead, and lime. Yeah,
So it'll withstand.
can withstand the heat. Yeah. Good. That brings us to the 2 dots, 4 lines from the bottom. Balo leguf v'chulei. Says the Gemara Tana Rabbanan v'hei siras mur aso benotzasa. You remove the crop with its feathers. Zu zefek. Zefek is the Gemara's word for crop. Yachol yaktir b'sakin v'yitlenu. You might have thought that you cut out the zefek, you cut out the crop, and then you take it out. Tamalomer benotzasa. Notal es hanotza ima. When you're cutting out the crop, you cut in such a way that the crop, skin, and feathers are all still together. Makes it for a much better throw. Remember the Gemara said yesterday, it's unbelievable how strong the Kohanim were that they could throw. We did the math. It was 31 plus amos, which is like 45, 50 feet. That's why it's a little bit easier. Abba Yossi ben Chanan Omer, notla, you do take out the zefek. You notla, you take it. Vinotel kur kivana. You also take the gizzard, which was another part of their digestive tract. That was the part of the body that really, I guess, really broke down the food. The crop was like a holding area. I don't know what I'm talking about. But the gizzard also is where the food would actually be broken down. Rabbi Shmuel Tana benotza sa. What does benotza sa mean? Benotza shela kodra besakin kimin aruba. You cut out the feathers like a window. Meaning the same thing. You're cutting like let's say you have this circle. You know that the crop and or kurkavan was underneath, and you just cut in a way where you can just pull the whole thing out, including the feathers, and then you throw it to the Trumas Hadesha in place, which was down the ramp and then wrap around the ramp, 10 amos off the edge of the ramp. Shalom al Yisrael. That brings us to the very top of Samaches, of Samachei, of Samachem and Beis, and for that, to cut those out. That's what it says. I mean, the language of Yaktir in the Gemara, Kodra, it means that you are seemingly removing it with something sharp. But I don't know why I assumed that. I mean, how else would you do it? But... What? It's true. Yeah, Yaktir is with a knife. Yeah, Rashi says that also. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So says the Gemara on the top of Samachem Beis. We'll be going about 2/3 of the way down, and then we're going to stop really mid sugya. But as you'll see, the next blot is not so long, so we just wanted to kind of divide up the volume of learning a little bit more equally. Shisa below hivdil. That you're supposed to tear the animal. Tana Rabbanan v'shisa ein shisa ela biyad. You're supposed to tear the animal open barehanded. Yikes! This is not a place for PETA to come visit. Says the Gemara v'chein homer b'isha seiv kishes agdi, because obviously everyone can tear a gedi with their bare hands. Pasha. That's what the pasuk says. What? What's that?
You're a real man.
Were you in Mike's chicken yesterday? Did you try this? Thank you. Like a regular person. Yeah. That's what the Gemara says. The Shisa was beyond. Again, these things are, we're not adjusted to these things, but this is the din. This is the din. Halavai, Hashem should bless us to bring these korbanos. But we're not used to these things, and the Kohanim have got to improve their constitution because this is not easy. You're cutting out the crop and the gizzard, you're throwing it, you're launching it, you're not throwing it, you're throwing it 40 feet, 50 feet. You know, there's a lot going on here that we're not used to. The blood was up to their knees during. There's so much here that's we're just not used to this. You know, it's really hard. It's a big shift. I mean, if you're a Kohen and you have a poor stomach for these things, you're in big trouble for your avoda. You're in big trouble.
Kohanim always had bad stomachs because all they did was eat meat and walk around barefoot. The Gemara says somewhere or another.
Yeah.
They ate meat all day and walked around barefoot. They always had bad stomachs.
I think one of my kids does that.
Right?
So that yes, that's right.
They had stomach problems always.
I don't remember that, but I remember somewhere else that the Yisurim of the Bnei Me'ayin are one of the more significant Yisurim. Where was that? That wasn't like Brachos territory. That was more recent than Brachos, which doesn't take much. 6 years ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next time around, I want to do like a memory thing because it's a lot. Okay, let's continue. We are on the third line of Samach Hamid Beis. Lo hisir es hamura, if you did not remove it, v'chule masnisin delok Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon Tanya. Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon Shemati Shemav Dilan b'chata saof. What did our Mishnah say by chata saof? Not our Mishnah, the previous Mishnah. You don't separate. Rebbe Elazar ben Reb Shimon says you do separate. My beinahu. Why is it that Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon argues with our Tanakama, our Mishnah that we learned on the previous blot? There it said that the chatas of is not mavdil, but the olas of is mavdil. So chatas of is not mavdil is our Tanakama. Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon is mavdil by the chatas of. My beinahu says the Gemara Amar Reb Chizda mitzui chatas of me'akev ika beinahu. That when we are discussing the squeezing out of the blood of the chatas of being ma'akev, that is the nafkamina. Tanakama savar mitzui chatas of me'akev. He holds that the chatas of is me'akev. The kevan de mitzui dam me'akev, that's the word that's missing, kavid ma'asola b'chatas of. We haven't learned about this principle yet. We will tomorrow. But if you treat a chatas of like an olas of, it's puzzle. So here we have being mavdil and that the mitzui adam is ma'akev and it's a chatas. That smells like then olas of. That's not allowed, and that's contrasted with Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon said mitzui chatas of lo ma'akev u'mechatech basar bam. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Totally fine. So that's the nafkamina, is whether or not we hold that mitzui chatas of is ma'akev. Rava Amar. Rava was of the opinion in regards to shehiyah b'simin sheni b'olas of ma'akev ikabinayim. In the general rules of shchita, there should not be a waiting period in the cutting between the cutting of the kana and the veshet. They need to be done really together. So the knives that are used for shchita knives are very sharp. They are non-serrated. They're smooth blades. And the motion that he'll do is, if my hand is the knife and my finger is the animal, you're using this very gentle sawing motion back and forth to get through everything pretty quickly. With chickens, you're talking about the girth of their neck is an inch. It's whatever. I don't know what it is. It's very small, a couple inches at the most. It's literally, they were tiny. Our chickens are huge compared to what and turkeys are gigantic. And turkeys are bichlal shayla. Yeah, they're tiny. So when they do those, they typically are just doing one or two motions in each. You do like a 1-2. It's usually pretty fast, provided that you do a good job and you have the right grip. Like in the factories, they have the chickens hanging up. Their something is tied. Their feet or their wings are tied, and there's like a factory, and they'll just take it, cut. It's very rapid. They'll do like hundreds in an hour. It's like very, very fast. So there, you got to check your blades every once in a while, because otherwise you have to go back to the last one. You have a lot of psulim. It's a lot of turkeys are a big shaila. If Shachter won't eat turkeys, he said there's no Masorah for those birds. There are no commonalities to birds other than the fact that we don't eat predatorial animals, but predators. But even then, we're not allowed to eat everything. So that's why we have some restrictions, at least according to the Masorah that Rav Hershel Shechter has, that we don't eat turkey because there's no Masorah on that. All right, all of that was answer number one. Let's look at answer number two. Rava Amar, that in regards to shehiyah, waiting, shehiyah b'simin sheni b'ola sa'of ma'akevi b'ika beinayu. With an ola, would we say that waiting between the kana and the veshet, or vice versa, would be ma'akev? Tanakam savar, shehiyah b'simin sheni b'ola sa'of lo ma'akev. V'afal gav de shehiyah ka'avid ma'isa ola sa'of, v'afal gav de shehiyah, even though you waited, ka'avid ma'isa ola b'chatas. Under these circumstances, if you did wait, you're treating it like an ola, which we said we're going to learn tomorrow, is problematic because you can't treat a chatas like an ola. If you're waiting, then you're basically not even doing a korban for those purposes. You're just cutting meat, and then that's not going to be problematic. And all of this will click a little bit more tomorrow when we learn the rest of when we learn the next at the end of our Gemara in the next parak. Abaye Omar, contrasting the shita of Rava, Rov Basar Me'akev Ikabenai, whether or not there's a din that one is obligated to cut Rov Basar of the flesh itself. And the Rashi over here goes to town on the fact that he says everyone agrees with the Kule Al Mashiach Ba'ola Simin Sheni Pasla, Vachaba Kamiflagi Rashi says the Tanakama Chituch Rov Basar Bechatas Lo Me'akev. And according to the other shita, it is Ma'akev, and that's a side machlokes. Ubeplukta de Reb Zera v'Reb Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. And this machlokes Abai v'Rava is aligned with the machlokes of Reb Zera and Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak. Chad amar shehiyah b'simin sheni be'ola sof me'akev ikabeinahu. One says that shehiyah is me'akev. V'chad amar ro basar me'akev ikabeinahu. And the other says, no, we're talking about ro basar. So the first shita would be Rava, and the second shita would be Abaye. We're going to stop right here at Michlal. And then we'll pick up tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, with another blot for Daf Samach Vav. Wishing you all a beautiful night.